A woman who learns to enjoy her own company is a woman you can't manipulate, can't impress with status, can't control with silence. And that kind of woman is dangerous. I'm Vernon. Today, I'll walk you through 4 quiet truths about women who spend time alone and why solitude, when chosen with clarity, becomes the most dangerous weapon against a world that profits from our insecurity. When she stops filling every moment with noise, tasks, or other people's needs, and finally sits still long enough to remember who she was before the world told her who to be. This isn't about being antisocial or bitter. It's something far more profound, a woman who finds comfort in her own company. She knows that solitude doesn't equal loneliness. It offers clarity. And clarity, my friends, becomes power. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because the insights we share here about rediscovering your authentic power after 60 could completely transform how you see yourself and your relationships. What happens when a woman stops fearing her own silence and begins to listen to it instead? Let's start with the first quiet truth.
Number 1. Her intuition gets louder and she listens. When a woman truly embraces solitude, something extraordinary happens. Her intuition, that voice she's been trained to ignore for decades, finally gets loud enough to hear. Clara was a 64-year-old retired nurse I worked with years ago, someone who had spent 40 years caring for everyone but herself. After her husband passed and her children moved across the country, she found herself alone for the first time in her adult life. Instead of rushing to fill that space with activities, committees, or new relationships, she did something radical. She sat with it. For an entire year, Clara chose stillness. She declined dinner invitations that felt obligatory. She stopped volunteering for causes that drained her energy just because she felt guilty saying no. She started taking long walks alone, eating dinner by candlelight with just her own thoughts for company. That's when something extraordinary happened. The voice inside her head, the one that had been whispering warnings and insights for years, suddenly became crystal clear. She started noticing which people left her feeling energized and which ones left her feeling empty. She began recognizing the difference between genuine kindness and manipulation. She could sense dishonesty from across a room. This isn't mystical thinking, it's practical psychology. When we're constantly surrounded by other people's energy, opinions, and expectations, our internal radar gets scrambled. We lose the ability to distinguish between our authentic feelings and the emotions we think we should have. In stillness, without the noise of others' needs drowning out her own inner voice, Clara's intuition sharpened like a blade. She started saying no to situations that felt wrong, even when she couldn't articulate why. She began trusting her first impressions of people, even when everyone else thought they were wonderful. Women who spend time alone develop what I call energetic literacy. She can read the room, sense hidden agendas, and detect authenticity with startling accuracy. She's not guessing anymore, she's knowing. And that knowing makes her impossible to fool. Think about it. How do you manipulate someone who trusts their own instincts more than your words? How do you convince someone to accept less than they deserve when they've spent enough time alone to know exactly what they're worth? You can't. And that's what makes her dangerous. As Maya Angelou once said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. The woman who embraces solitude has learned to tell that story to herself first, to listen to her own narrative before anyone else tries to rewrite it.
Number 2, she no longer performs for love. Perhaps the most liberating transformation that happens in solitude is this: she stops performing for love. For most of her life, she's been an actress in other people's plays. She's laughed at jokes that weren't funny to keep the peace. She's shrunk her opinions to avoid conflict. She's worn masks so seamlessly that she almost forgot what her real face looked like underneath. Solitude is the great revealer. When there's no audience to perform for, when there's no one to impress or appease, something beautiful happens. She starts to remember who she actually is. Women who embrace solitude begin to detox from what I call performance mode living. This is the exhausting habit of constantly editing herself to be more palatable, more agreeable, more lovable. She stops asking herself, "What do they want me to be?" and starts asking, "What do I actually think? What do I actually feel? What do I actually want?" Virginia Woolf understood this when she wrote, "For most of history, Anonymous was a woman. The woman in solitude is no longer anonymous, not even to herself." This doesn't mean she becomes harsh or uncaring. Instead, she becomes authentic. She stops laughing at jokes that aren't funny, but her real laughter becomes more genuine. She stops agreeing with opinions she doesn't share, but when she does agree, it carries weight. She stops saying yes to everything, but when she says yes, it means something. The world isn't used to this kind of woman. We're accustomed to women who bend, who accommodate, who smooth over rough edges for everyone else's comfort. A woman who has learned to enjoy her own company has discovered something revolutionary. She doesn't need to be liked by everyone to be worthy of love. She's learned that authentic connection can only happen when you show up as yourself, not as who you think others want you to be. She's discovered that the love you have to perform for isn't really love at all. It's transaction, it's approval seeking, it's conditional acceptance. This makes her dangerous because she can't be bought with false flattery. She can't be controlled with the threat of disapproval. She's developed what psychologists call internal validation. Her sense of worth comes from within, not from external sources. The woman who no longer seeks to impress becomes unforgettable. Not because she's trying to be memorable, but because authenticity is so rare, it shines like a beacon in a world full of performances. Now, you can share this with a woman who's done bending herself just to keep others comfortable. Stillness doesn't make her invisible, it makes her magnetic. And when she stops performing, something magical shifts. She begins to attract without even trying.
Number 3, she attracts without chasing. Here's a truth that might surprise you. The less she chases attention, the more magnetic she becomes. There's a psychological principle at work here that most people don't understand. When we're constantly seeking validation, reaching out, trying to prove our worth, we create what I call needy energy. It repels people on a subconscious level because it feels desperate, exhausting, and emotionally draining. Women who have learned to be alone have developed something far more powerful, sovereign energy. She's complete unto herself. She doesn't need you to fill a void because there is no void. She doesn't need your attention to feel valuable because she's discovered her value through quiet self-reflection. As Eleanor Roosevelt wisely observed, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. The woman in solitude has gone one step further. She's learned that no one can make her feel superior either. Her worth isn't dependent on comparison or external validation. This creates an invisible but powerful magnetism. People are drawn to what feels whole, what feels peaceful, what feels sovereign. When someone doesn't need your approval, paradoxically, you want to give it to them. When someone isn't chasing your attention, you find yourself paying attention to them. Think about the most interesting people you know. They're usually the ones who seem perfectly content whether you're there or not. They're engaged when you're present, but they're not diminished by your absence. They have rich inner lives that don't require an audience. Women who spend time alone develop this quality naturally. She's interesting because she's interested in ideas, in growth, in the deep questions of life. She doesn't fill conversations with gossip or complaints because she's been having more meaningful conversations with herself. She sets boundaries not out of anger or defensiveness, but out of clarity. She knows what serves her and what depletes her. She knows the difference between healthy relationships and energy vampires. And because she's not desperate for connection, she can afford to be selective. This selectivity makes her valuable. When she chooses to spend time with you, it means something. When she shares her thoughts with you, it's a gift, not a bid for attention. When she includes you in her life, it's because you add value to it, not because she needs you to complete it. What makes this kind of woman truly dangerous is that she doesn't chase. She doesn't convince, pursue, or beg for anyone's time or affection. She simply exists in her own power, and either you recognize that power and are drawn to it, or you don't. Either way, she's fine. Save this video and tell me in the comments, what's one thing that changed for you when you stopped chasing and started simply being? Perhaps the greatest power in her solitude is how she chooses to leave. And if she can draw people in without even trying, can you guess what she does next when silence feels more sacred than chaos? Number 4, she walks away without drama. Here's the most powerful truth about women who embrace solitude. When peace becomes her baseline, chaos becomes unacceptable. And when something becomes unacceptable, she doesn't fight it, fix it, or endure it. She simply walks away. This is where her dangerous power becomes most apparent. She doesn't need the last word. She doesn't require an explanation or an apology. She doesn't try to make anyone understand her decision. She simply recognizes when something no longer serves her, and she removes herself with the quiet dignity of someone who knows her own worth. The world is not prepared for this kind of woman. We're accustomed to women who fight for relationships, who exhaust themselves trying to fix what's broken, who stay in situations that diminish them because they've been taught that leaving makes them selfish or weak. A woman who has learned to love her own company has discovered something profound. She would rather be alone than be in bad company. She would rather have silence than have noise that disturbs her peace. She would rather have empty spaces in her life than fill them with people or situations that deplete her energy. This doesn't mean she gives up easily or lacks commitment. It means she has learned to distinguish between situations worth fighting for and situations that are simply incompatible with her well-being. She's developed what I call peaceful discernment, the ability to recognize when something isn't meant for her without taking it personally. When she walks away, she does it without creating a scene, without trying to hurt anyone, without seeking revenge. She simply redirects her energy toward what serves her growth and peace. She understands that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to remove yourself from dynamics that bring out the worst in everyone involved. As Rumi wrote centuries ago, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." Women in solitude have learned to trust that strange pull, even when it pulls them away from what others think they should want. This kind of departure is devastating to those who are used to drama, to those who mistake intensity for intimacy, to those who confuse chaos with passion. They don't know how to process someone who simply leaves, without explanation, without negotiation, without the emotional fireworks they've come to expect. She's learned that her time, her energy, and her peace are finite resources. She's learned that saying yes to everything means saying no to what truly matters. She's learned that she doesn't owe anyone her presence in their chaos. What makes a woman who embraces solitude truly dangerous is not that she becomes isolated or bitter. It's that she becomes free. Free from the need to be understood by everyone. Free from the compulsion to fix what isn't hers to fix. Free from the exhausting performance of keeping everyone else comfortable at the expense of her own peace.
So, now that we've explored what solitude reveals, let's take a moment to reflect on the 4 quiet truths of a woman who chooses her own company. Her intuition becomes her compass, sharp, clear, and impossible to ignore. She stops performing for love and starts living authentically. She attracts without chasing because wholeness is magnetic. And she walks away from what doesn't serve her without explanation or drama. As the philosopher Lao Tzu taught us, at the center of your being you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want. Women who embrace solitude have found that center. They're no longer asking permission to be themselves or apologizing for taking up space. She's not scared of her own thoughts anymore. She's done begging for what should be freely given. She's finished shrinking to make others comfortable. And if you think that kind of woman is dangerous, you're absolutely right, because she's finally free. Do you have a question, a personal insight, or a story about finding power in solitude? I'd love to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, make sure to like and subscribe for more wisdom on authentic living and emotional strength, especially after 60. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.